Bonsoir mes amis, tout le monde dans le monde du vin. Bienvenue à Dan. Dan aime le vin très beaucoup. So why am I speaking in a bit of French with an accent not dissimilar to an actor in Allo Allo from a number of years ago? Well, because tomorrow is Bastille Day. And if you've ever been anywhere near Franschhoek and you've done so in the middle of the year, there's a good chance you'll have stumbled on to the Francophone festival that is Bastille celebrations in Franschhoek at around this time every year. Now, normally it is an almighty party. Everybody discovers their inner Frenchman, drapes themselves in garlic and berets, and charges off to be as French as possible and just enjoy a really wonderful weekend of indulgence in Franschhoek, which, let's be honest, Franschhoek is pretty good at. But with our current situation, with the world the way it is, and everything, celebrations of French food and wine festivals amongst them, very much muted at the moment, the good people of Franschhoek had to scale things down dramatically. They didn't cut them out completely. There was a really exciting social media tour of Franschhoek that took place. You could order food in. There were a couple of people who managed to gather and celebrate. There were some bands playing, Daryl Robertson and her team flying the flag for Franschhoek, but it wasn't quite as belligerent as a Franschhoek celebration of Bastille Day normally is. And so to try and make up for it a little, and perhaps begin the preparations for Bastille Day 2021, we're heading down to Franschhoek in just a moment, where we're going to be catching up with two people. The first of those, Yvonne Lester, is the head winemaker at Rupert and Rothschild. And normally I would have been trying all three of her wines. Unfortunately, because movement of alcohol is now banned and two of those three wines were scheduled to arrive this morning, I've got only one of them, but it's still a pretty special wine that's, I reckon, gained iconic status here in South Africa. So we'll try some Rupert and Rothschild Classique with Yvonne just a little later. And then after that, we hope, currently sitting at La Motte is my good friend Hein Koegelenberg. And Hein is currently sitting with his typewriter plugged into a tape recorder next to a Telkom landline, and they are doing their level best to get online and join us. So hopefully Hein will be with us in about 20-25 minutes to discuss his Sauvignon Blanc and his Millennium, a wine that I've got a particularly close relationship with. I'll explain why just a little later. But before we get Hein, and indeed before we get to Yvonne, I think it's only right, as somebody who is involved in the alcohol industry by virtue of hosting a wine show and many tastings and being a great advocate for South African wine, to reflect on the decision that was made by the president last night. It's not one that has been popular in the wine drinking world, but it's also one that you can understand, because a lot of the issues in the trauma units, issues that are being faced by doctors and by hospitals, have sadly been alcohol related. We do know that there is an issue with the consumption of alcohol in South Africa, but it's an issue that affects those who drink alcohol problematically as opposed to responsibly. And it's hard not to feel that alcohol's kind of copped most of the blame for everything that's happened at the moment, while at the same time, decisions that are quite hard to get your head around, like let's put everybody into a full taxi at the moment, difficult to weigh up. So I'd like to think that there's a middle ground that can still be found, not just because I'd love people to be able to share and to drink great South African wine, as well as the other drinks that fall under the current ban, but also because the wine industry doesn't just provide such incredible levels of employment and stimulate business in South Africa, but it also flies a flag for South Africa in terms of that production being such an important part of our economic makeup. And yes, we can still export, but the sales around South Africa, which are now absolutely dead stopped, really doesn't help the wine industry that's already taken such a battering. Throw in the restaurants as well with that 9 o'clock curfew. And I really do hope that there will be some thinking, there will be some plans made up, that the industry and government will come together, and we will see some sort of middle ground that takes cognizance of the challenges that alcohol does pose to the current national health, but that also the wine industry and the other industries with which it partners can open up to an extent and at least keep people employed, keep sales going, and keep people in particular drinking the South African wine, which we all love and cherish so much. So that is my hope. We'll see how things go. I know President Ramaphosa does watch Dan really likes wine twice a week, religiously so. So, Mr. President, we'd love not a U-turn, but just a slight nudge in a different direction that's helpful to the broader industry. It's an industry that makes fantastic wine, and we've got some fantastic wine to celebrate today. And as I am in my Bleu Rouge et Blanc, Nous allons commencer avec Franschhoek and our Bastille celebrations. So let's head down to the Huguenot Valley, one of my favorite places on earth, and meet up with a South African-French collaboration. It is Rupert and Rothschild, and it is head winemaker Yvonne Lester. Yvonne, hello.
Hi Dan, bonjour, monsieur.
Je vais très bien, merci, and thank you so much for joining us. And I have to say, I'm really glad that you're smiling quite so broadly, because for the alcohol industry in particular, and the wine industry specifically for us, the last 24 hours have not been the most enjoyable.
No, it has not. But you know what? We prefer to focus on the good. And we have amazing wine, and that's what I'm focusing on. So the wine knows nothing about Corona. I've spoken to the barrels this morning, and it seems all happiness. So I'm happy in wine, in my little bubble.
Well, I've got no surprise that the barrels are happy, because they have you looking after them, and you do a splendid job down at Rupert and Rothschild, an estate that forms part of Franschhoek. And I'd like to kick off with that, because Franschhoek generally is a place where people go and enjoy themselves. They have great fun. You have terrific wine, wonderful restaurants. It's a beautiful, beautiful place, and a wonderfully laid back corner of South Africa. And it should have been absolutely a buzz over this last weekend with Bastille celebrations. It obviously wasn't. I know you still got some sort of celebration in, but a very different weekend for Franschhoek, for Bastille this year.
No, for sure. It's the year 2020. I think in general, it's challenging. But I mean, we're doing what we can do, keeping up the spirits. And we were last week. We had people in the tasting room, bit by bit, and actually, under circumstances, we were really doing very well. So I can only talk about what's happening at Rupert Rothschild, and I have a lot of friends up in the valley as well. And you know what is amazing is how the wine people support each other, and we are there for each other. So if you're not having a good day, just phone your friend and have a glass of wine, talk about it. It's like a small little family. So it's really actually special.
And it's a family that has a strong sense of French connection, the Huguenot identity. But that extends to an added level for Rupert and Rothschild. We know the Rupert side particularly well, but then there's the Rothschilds, who've also got a little bit of pedigree. Explain how that Rupert and Rothschild connection came about, and how this collaboration works, Yvonne.
Yes, so the partnership was formed in 1997, and you'll actually see on each bottle of our wine, you will see Rupert and Rothschild, and then you will find the names Anthony Rupert, yes, and Benjamin the Rothschild on the labels. This is very special to put their surnames on our product. And then the partnership was formed between Dr. Anton Rupert and Baron Edmore. And our flagship wine is called Baron Edmore, and then our Chardonnay is Baroness Nadine. So Baroness Nadine and Baron Edmore were husband and wife. So then Dr. Anton Rupert gave it to his son Anthony Rupert, and then Baron Edmond gave it to his son Benjamin. And this is really close to these families' hearts. And this partnership was formed for one specific reason, and that was absolutely focus on quality. That's the one goal. And both these families absolutely love wine. And I think, if you have passion for it and you really love doing what you want, and you've got these two families, and they support you and they fully back you, we are very blessed. So I think it's a massive privilege to work for these two families. And I started in the year 2001. So Anthony Rupert actually appointed me, and I was the last person he did appoint before he passed away, unfortunately. And now 25% of the Rupert partnership belongs to Mr. Johan Rupert, and then 25% Hanley Rupert, and then 50% Benjamin. The Rothschilds, they also own a couple of other wineries in the world, of which Chateau Clark, you will know Chateau Clark, and then also Benjamin has a share in Chateau Lafite, which is very special. And then Macan in Spain, and in Argentina, Flechas de los Andes, and then we've got Remapere in New Zealand. So, I mean, the world we have the most amazing places and connections with both these families. And as you know, Mr. Johan Rupert, he also owns Lormera, Anthony Rupert Wines, and then Hanley owns La Motte. So obviously Hein will talk to you about that. So the spectrum is amazing. But if we get back to Rupert and Rothschild, our focus is definitely on the Bordeaux varietals. So we have only 3 wines, which I think is part of our success story. 2 red wines, and then the Chardonnay. The Chardonnay is Little Princess, smaller production, but then on the reds, the Classique, which is, I think, one of the most famous wine brands in South African industry, which I'm very proud of with my team, and then Baron Edmore, which is the flagship.
You have those 3. I was going to be drinking all 3 of them, and then the regulations sadly prevented the Edmond and the Nadine from making it through. I do have the Classique, and we're going to try some of that very happily in a moment. Before we do that, though, I'm weighing up everything you say. Here you've got the Rupert family, who are wonderful people, great benefactors of all sorts of spaces, but people with some fairly heavy-hitting wine interests. And then you've got the Rothschild family, who've got, as you say, wine all over the world. I've got a couple of bottles of the Rimaperi just over my shoulder to the right. No Lafite, sadly, but definitely some Rimaperi. So 2 almighty wine families coming together. That must be a little bit of pressure when you have to be the winemaker there.
No, I don't think so. I started when I was much younger, obviously. So when I started here in 2001, it was just the beginning. I remember when I started here, we were just starting to sell wine. So one of my friends was the first customer in the tasting room. So I think I grew with the wines. I grew with it, and we've had so many opportunities. And I know we do only 3 wines, but the way we work and the detail we focus on, I've never been bored a day in my life. And maybe, yes, if you're from outside coming in, you would say, oh my goodness, how do you do this? It's actually quite a big operation with a lot of pressure, but not for me. I think for me, it comes very naturally. And I also have some in my family. Actually, both my grandparents were in the wine industry. So for me, it's something really natural. I think if it's your passion, it's, as they say, it's not really hard work. It's just fun all day long. I think working with people is more challenging these days than with the wine. The wine is, it's my passion. So no, I don't feel the pressure. I really enjoy this. It's a challenge some days, true, but that's cool.
Last question, and I can see you loving it because the smile is all encompassing. Last question before we start with the wine and try some of it. There is obviously the French ownership. Is this completely your show? Do you work with some of the Rothschild team in terms of how you put the wine together? How does that element of the partnership work?
No, not necessarily. But what I do travel a lot. And I've been to most of the Rothschilds. I've been to the Champagne. I've been to Macan, the new partnership in La Rioja. So I visited most of the places, and we learn from each other. And with Chateau Clark, the winemakers come here, and we travel there. So we have a lot of exchange of information and knowledge. But as far as, for example, when we make the wine or when we blend, obviously in different countries, it's a very different game. But for us, it's amazing to be able to learn from each other. And when it comes down to blending and fine tweaking, and I mean, you can ask advice from each other and learn. We're always on the learn and share, because no one will ever be able to make the same wine. It's I will tell you now about the 2017 when we built the new Classique winery. But it's amazing. Even if I do exactly the same thing with exactly the same grapes we've got 2 wineries now, the Baron Edmore winery and the Classique winery. The wine will not even be the same, and none vintage will ever be the same. So yeah, we share a lot of knowledge.
Well, it's really good of you, Yvonne, to go to little places like Chateau Lafite and help them out with your expertise and make them better. I think good for you. All right, let's get on to this wine. Just the popularity of this wine is staggering. The number of wine lists, the number of events I go to, the number of times people come around for dinner, and this is the go-to bottle. And I think it's a combination, and it's brilliant that you've managed to strike that balance, because you've gone massively popular while still retaining something of such high quality that people just embrace and just love. Is there a secret to it? Is there some particular Yvonne magic that has put this wine so firmly on the map as you have?
Yes, of course, but it's a very simple answer. Number one, obviously, we have the best grapes in the country. I don't know what Hein is going to say about that, but Rupert Rothschild does have the best grapes in the country. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is the people. That is super important. You need happy people to make the best wine. And I promise you, it does show in the wine. And we are also very focused on quality and detail. So it doesn't matter if you have 5 different batches of wine or 55 or 58 or 90, it doesn't matter. You need to spend time with each little parcel individually. And if you spend that amount of time and detail, in the end, the blend will be amazing. So it's straightforward, actually.
Well, there you go. If you're watching and you want to make wine, Yvonne's just told you exactly how to do it. Just get the best grapes in the world, get the best people in the world, and the best winemaker, and it's fairly easy, really, isn't it?
Yep.
All right. Well, let's plunge into it. This is the 2017, and this is it. Just very simply, just a Cab Merlot blend. Is that it?
No. It is 2017. Is a Merlot Cab Franc PV blend. So mostly Merlot, about 50% Merlot. I love Merlot. Actually, my friend Olivier from Chateau Petrus, he had a bottle of Classique 2017 yesterday in Bordeaux, close to the beach, and he paired it with fish. Can you believe it? But it was amazing. So the Merlot soothes the wine and gives the elegance and the bright red fruit. And then we've got the Cab Sauv, 35% of Cabernet Sauvignon, and then 10% of Cab Franc. And the Cab Franc gives the nice structure and depth and length. And then the Petit Verdot. The Petit Verdot for aging is also amazing. So the thing with the Classique is it always over-delivers. So normally I tell the people the wine can mature maybe 7-8 years from vintage. But then you open a 99 Classique and you go, oh my goodness, especially obviously the Magnums. But the aim of the Classique is it's a wine you can drink as is, or lunch, dinner, and sometimes we even call it our breakfast wine. So it's very versatile and it pairs very well with food. It's a solid bet and you know what you're going to get when you buy a bottle of Classique. The style will be the same. Obviously vintage variations. We're having the 2017, which was a remarkable vintage. And we built a new winery in 2016. Specifically for the Classique. So the winery was designed to fit the wine, and we do only the Classique in that winery. So all the grapes going to that winery will go into this bottle. And so we took the past 15 years data of Classique and grapes, and at what stage do we harvest that, and for malolactic fermentation and all the rest. So it's a beautiful winery. Actually quite simple. It's not very complicated. But as I said, the best grapes, and off we go. We've got amazing stainless steel fermenters, and then we've got concrete tanks for the malolactic fermentation, and then French oak barrels, a lot of French oak barrels for maturation. And we do mature the wine about for 16, 17 months in 225 litre French oak barrels.
The result is a vast fan club right around the world. In fact, you have a fan from London reporting in now, the great Greg Sherwood, saying that the Classique is a real favourite with our clients, along with the Chateau Clark. So there we go. Thank you, Mr. Sherwood, the great South African wine ambassador in London. One of so many fans that you have everywhere, which leads to 2 further questions for you, Yvonne. You make a fair amount of this wine. It is massively popular. How do you keep the quality for such a large amount of wine? And how do you respond to people who are they've perhaps got a sense of anticipation? I drank the 2015, therefore I expect the 2016 to taste the same. Do you try and produce something that's almost formulaic, or is it this is the best of what we got, this is going to show the best of this year?
Yep. You got to play with the vintage, and I explain always to the consumers, it's an art. So if you're artists and some vintages, you get maybe 5 or 6 different colors to work with, and the next vintage you have 25 or 50 pencils to color in. There's a big difference. So sometimes most amazing vintages, it plays out very naturally. Sometimes you have to work a little harder, but you keep the style the same. And I think because we have so many different parcels, and as explained a little earlier, you make the best of what you can. So sometimes the wine more or less does what it wants to do. So for example, say we go for PV, and that is the component which is going to give me more color and more structure. That's what it does. And you don't push too hard. So some Merlots I really actually age in second or third full barrels, because we need to use the fruit flavors and focus on the red fruit flavors. So you play each little batch, and we actually have fun in the winery, and my cellar workers also say, listen to the wine, talk to the wine. If we inoculate the yeast, you stand there and you talk to the wine. So you have to understand where the grapes are coming from and where you want the blend to end up, and who's the consumer, and what do we want to do. And obviously we want the wine to mature beautifully. So you have to also focus on the future, because a wine, this can last 20 years, and someone will phone me and say, wow, I kept it for 20 years. What can I expect from this wine? So it's not only for now. You have to really look into the future and see what you can do.
Yvonne Lester, the wine whisperer of Franschhoek, and doing such a wonderful job therein. We are going to have you back on the show just as soon as lockdown is done, so we can drink the other 2 wines and return to the Classique as well, maybe an older vintage just for comparison. But before we do let you go, we can't mention the Nadine and the Edmund without discussing them a little. For people who haven't had them, what can they expect from those 2 wines? What's the makeup? What's the delight therein?
Okay, so let's start with the Baron Edmore. The Baron Edmore, that's our flagship wine. It's also a Bordeaux blend, also mostly Merlot, but all 5 Bordeaux varietals. So in this Classique, we don't have the Malbec, but in the Edmore, we have the Malbec. The Baron Edmore is coming only from Stellenbosch Vineyards. It's our top sites. And the amount, well, let's say firstly, it's about the vineyards again, so that's the best grapes. And then we've got an optical sorter in the winery. So we use only the best berries in that grapes. I use a bit more new wood on the Edmore, although not too much, about 50%, to keep the balance of the fruit flavors. But what you can expect of the Baron Edmore is a bit more layers, a bit more structure, still not big and bold, because that's not what we do. We go for elegancy and vibrancy and youthfulness. But Baron Edmore is a wine you pour, you sit with a fantastic plate of food and obviously good company, and that wine you can mature for 20 years, no problem. So that's very, very special. And then for the Baroness Nadine, the Chardonnay, the grapes are coming mostly from Elgin. So the focus there would be freshness, flint, mineral, lemon, lime. And if you mature the Nadine, the secondary flavors will become soft caramel, maybe nougat, toffee, but the initial flavors will be the fresh ones. And it's something you can have with sushi or oysters. Most people still think South African Chardonnay should be big and bold. It's not my belief. It's a white wine, and in our winery, because it's the smallest of the production, as I said, we call it the little princess. And the Chardonnay we ferment and mature in food race, so it's 2,500 liter wooden tanks basically, and then Noblos, concrete eggs, and then a little bit of new wood, but second and third full as well. So all of those components finally into the one blend.
Oh, I think one of our viewers has picked up the response ideally. Angelina Koegelenberg with a very detailed wine analysis. Ooh, yummy. And I think she's got that absolutely spot on. one of our regular viewers. Thank you very much, Angelique. Yvonne, thank you so much for being with us today. You have completely out-professionalized me with your very elegant set that I know you've been building for the last week. Sadly, it's only the one wine that we're sharing today, but just as soon as the regulations loosen, and we pray fervently that that is with immediate effect, or as close to as we can, we'll have that Chardonnay up, as well as the Baron Edmond. And no surprises that there's a little bit of Merlot in there, because I think between you and Danielle Leroux, there's a very strong surge of making sure Merlot gets celebrated, and correctly so. So thank you so much. Keep warm down in the Cape. I know it's a little damp and chilly. You got a big bottle of wine to get you through the evening there, and we look forward to having you back on Dan Really Likes Wine just as soon as we can.
Thank you very much, Dan. This was fun. Thank you very much.
It certainly was. Yvonne Lester, who is the head winemaker at Rupert and Rothschild down in Franschhoek. Basically the best winemaker they've got in the whole group. So they send her around the world. She fixes all the rest of the wine, makes it all taste okay, but never quite as good as the South African stuff. Headlined by the Classique. They make an extraordinary amount of this wine, and it's what always dazzles me, despite the fact that it is wholesale wine. You don't want to say that, but they make it in large quantities, and yet it is still absolutely fantastic. So, really good. Just so sorry we didn't have the Nadine or the Edmond, but we will have them to complete our Rupert and Rothschild collection a little later on. A month or so, we shall see. Helen Nicol, my mum. What a lovely, happy winemaker. So there we go. If my mum likes you, you must be fabulous. Okay, so there is one half of our Franschhoek collection, the Rupert and Rothschild Classique and Yvonne Lester. We are just down the road, and we keep it to then the family, because the ownership of Rupert and Rothschild, as Yvonne told us, is 25% Johann Rupert, 50% the Rothschild family, and then 25% Hanley Rupert, Johann's sister, and her husband is the semi-professional golfer, the accomplished yachtsman, the man about town, the unofficial mayor of Franschhoek, and the guy behind La Motte, Mr. Hein Koegelenberg. Hein, welcome to the show. A very good evening. And thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
Very good. In Franschhoek, it's cold and raining, so it's very good for us as wine growers.
Oh, good conditions growing wine. Not such good conditions for getting out and about and celebrating, which you would have been doing over the last weekend, Hein. I was reading your blog yesterday, a very touching tribute to the people of Franschhoek and to what you missed out on this weekend. And I would have been thinking, well, you missed out on the money you made, and you missed out on all the tourists coming in. But what you touched on was just how important this weekend is to the people of Franschhoek to show off very proudly what you have in the valley, show off the food and the wine, to engage and to have a real celebration of Franschhoek and this extraordinary Huguenot heritage that you have in the valley.
Yes, Dan, if you are regular coming to Franschhoek, you will know that, the people of Franschhoek show the visitors the way we live and the way we do things in Franschhoek, and obviously you will be part of that when you visit us with the festivals that we had. Obviously this weekend was the Bastille Festival. That's one of the big festivals, and this year it was not live, and for when in your life could you imagine that we will have a festival and it's not live? Must say there was plenty of visitors around as well. And unfortunately, our president closed down on the sales of wine today. But we in Franschhoek sell experience, and experience is not only drinking; it's much more than that.
It is indeed. As anybody who's been to Franschhoek will know, it's just an enchanting place to go and spend time at so many levels. And La Motte offers that with so much. And we're going to touch on that in just a second. Before we do, you did mention the regulation. Over and above having La Motte and Leopard's Leap as your brand sign, you're a very influential figure in the South African wine industry. Right at the start of the show, I mentioned the difficulty and the understanding that there are issues around alcohol in the hospitals at the moment, but by the same token, it's really hammering a wine industry in particular that has already been under the cosh for the last number of months. What is Hein Koegelenberg's response to the call that was made last night? And is there some sort of middle ground where we can accept that there are some issues around consumption of alcohol, trauma in hospitals, but by the same time realize that the majority of South Africans drink responsibly, and that we do have a wine industry that's in a bit of trouble at the moment?
Yes, Dan, our reaction at the moment, we've been always being part of the tourism offering side, and not really on the drinking side. Yes, we offer wine, but we see wine as part of food, and we see wine as part of the way of living, and that for me is not getting you into a hospital. So we are sort of away from the hard liquor line. We are focusing much more on what we offer to people to come out and have a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend and experience all the different things that we have in the valley. And that's not only individuals. We are targeting families and groups and also outdoor experiences like mountain biking, hiking, and all of those good for life things that we are offering.
And there are so many of them. It's an area I do love, and I think I mentioned this to you on the golf course when you were absolutely hammering me the last time we played, Hein, and that's that my very first wine route when I was in my first year at the University of Cape Town, which was at least 6 or 7 years ago, was out to Franschhoek, and the very first bottle of wine I bought, Hein, which cost me basically I didn't buy any textbooks that quarter, but it was well worth the investment. It was a bottle of 1995 La Motte Millennium, and sadly I drank it because I very much wish I still had it.
I still have some old stock, so I will replace that one with you. But 95 was a very, very good vintage for South Africa and also for La Motte. So I suppose that one was a wonderful bottle of wine that you had.
Yeah, I probably didn't appreciate it quite as much as I should have, but the memories are very firmly entrenched, and they've been enhanced because I've been to La Motte many times since, and there are many reasons to go to La Motte. The wine headlines, and we'll talk about that in a second, but you've got, for me, two other massive attractions, and let's kick off with the first of them because you've already mentioned the food. You've got a terrific restaurant. You've got a wonderful chef, and in that restaurant, for me, just a lovely celebration of Franschhoek cooking, of South African cooking. There's a hint of international to it as well. It's a wonderfully cosmopolitan restaurant, but with some very firm South African roots.
Yes, no, wonderful. Obviously, we focus on local food and regionalized food, but also local. And I think to support local is really important going forward, especially now during COVID and also past COVID. I think we as individuals need to support local, all the local food, the local people that do business. And that's the only way that we will make a difference also to the lives of the people that we want to survive.
Now, that restaurant is well worth a visit, not just for the food, but you can wash that food down with some rather good wine. So let's try the first of those wines before I talk about my other highlight outside of the wine down at the estate. And this is your Sauvignon Blanc. It's the 2020, so it is a nice fresh vintage, and you can see it there on screen. And this has become a bit of a bestseller, I'd imagine, for you, Hein, because it's a Sauvignon Blanc, much as the Classique I was talking to Yvonne about earlier. I tend to see everywhere. This La Motte it's a very common appearance on wine lists and at wine events. It's got a very big following, hasn't it?
Yes, Dan, you're 100% correct. We over the years now, when we started in 1999, repositioning La Motte in South Africa and also in the foreign market, we identified Sauvignon Blanc as one of the drivers for La Motte. We invested in vineyards in Franschhoek, Stellenbosch, and Cape South Coast. That is now closer to Bot River and also Elim, the most southern point in Africa. So we identify the more cooler areas and we invest in planting vineyards in those areas. So the La Motte Sauvignon Blanc normally is about 25% of Franschhoek vineyards, about 50% of Stellenbosch vineyards, and then about 25% of South Coast, that's now Hermanus, Botteriver, Elam vineyards. And then obviously we blend about 8% of Semillon also with our Sauvignon Blanc on a yearly basis. It's really one of the wines that on a it's one of the safe Sauvignon Blancs that you can buy in South Africa, because it's always the same type of style, it's always the same quality, and you know it's a given. So it's one of those wines that you don't need to worry about.
It's how much of a challenge is that? You talk about the different areas it comes from. It's an almighty blend with that added Semillon, which gives it such lovely structure as well. But to create that, yeah, you're picking and choosing a bit from here, a bit from there, bringing it all together. How much of an art form is that in creating not just a great Sauvignon Blanc, but consistently creating a great Sauvignon Blanc?
Yeah, we're really fortunate because our winemaker Edmond Blanche is now with us for many years. I think it's now more than 22 years that he is the winemaker, starting out being the assistant winemaker when I joined La Motte. And at the moment, he is the head winemaker, putting everything together from the different regions. And as I said, we decided to position La Motte more cooler climate vineyards and invested in the vineyards over years now. And it's for Edmond harvest separately in different tanks, and then the blending process is starting now after about 2 or 3 months on the lease. Then he will start blending. This was the first blend this year. We had the early wine in. Normally we are in the market around July with our next vintage. And as you said, it's quite big blends, but it's very distinctive, the different vineyards and the flavors that you get from the different vineyards. So sometime when you next year when you come again to Franschhoek around the harvest or just after harvest, you must come and taste. There's about 25 different tanks and different flavors that you are sitting with in the winery, and then the master blender is Edmond putting it together over a period of time, and it's always an interesting period. That
for me, it's one of the most staggering aspects of winemaking, and I've been watching it and engaged with it long enough. Still don't really understand it, but the fact that you can take all these different pieces of the puzzle and bring them together and create this, to me, is just absolute genius. And there is up in Johannesburg here, Hein, we have a measure of a Sauvignon Blanc. If it's an exceptional Sauvignon Blanc, you can say that even the Joburg foodie, Steve Seinfeld, who generally hates Sauvignon Blanc, would drink it. I think he drinks several glasses of this. So it definitely gets a thumbs up as a terrific blend. And it leads rather nicely into our second wine today, which is also a blend. But before we go into that, I'd like to talk about one of the other really important aspects of La Motte, and that's your gallery, because headlined by a gentleman called Pierneef, who's done 1 or 2 decent pictures in his time. It's another really important part of your offering.
Yeah, that's, when we started this whole process of repositioning La Motte, we started with the vineyards and identified different vineyards in different regions and planted it. And then we went through the process of changing our facilities, our wineries to make sure that we can meet the style that we want. And then we went into a phase 10 years after that in creating the experiences around the brand. And for us, it was easier to focus on the passions that myself and my wife had, to work around that and create this experience for us with the La Motte brand. And a part of Hanli's passion is art. Obviously, she's mezzo-soprano singing, but then also art. And Pierneef many years ago was also part of Dr. Rupert, his friendship. So he bought a lot of Pierneef, and obviously when I wanted to use the Pierneef name on the wine bottle, I had to get the permission of Marita, that's the daughter. She was in London, and I wrote a letter, and then obviously she gave me the permission. and she wanted 3 boxes of wine per year for the right for me to use the name on a label. So obviously we became friends whenever we go to London. Myself and Hanley had tea with her and Ian at the Hilton Hotel. And then over the years we became friends, and then later we bought the heritage collection that her father left her, and we brought that back to La Motte, and we built the museum at La Motte, and that's now the home of the heritage collection of Marita. That's the daughter of Pierneef. 42 wonderful Pierneef paintings, but also his easel and his brushes, and the personal stuff. The last time we saw her, she gave us 2 small paintings, really small paintings, similar size as my phone, and that was in her dollhouse, the paintings that the father did for her, and one for me and one for Hanley. So that was really special. So we have a special relationship with Marita over the years, and then that's why we named the restaurant also Pierneef, our Pierneef restaurant, and we have the 2 wonderful Pierneef wines in the La Motte stable.
It's a wonderful all-around tribute to a great South African artist. I think you did well there. 3 cases a year for the use of the name. That's good going. Although, I tell you what, if you want, Hein, you can produce the Dan Nickel for 2 cases a year. I'll give you that quite happily, and I'll look forward to seeing what you come up with. You have that Pierneef. It's another splendid wine, but it's not the one we're going to be wrapping up the show with this week, because instead we go back to the wine that I mentioned a little earlier from my very first visit out to Franschhoek as a student with little interest in lectures, but plenty of interest in discovering the world of wine, and that is the La Motte Millennium. And it's fair to say we went back to talking about the Classique with Yvonne a little earlier. The Classique has become an iconic South African red blend. I'm not sure the Millennium is too far off that, perhaps not quite the numbers, but you're still not too shy of 400,000 bottles, which is not a small production. And again, it's a wine that the people have fallen in love with, have placed faith in, and return to year after year after year.
Yeah, Dan, obviously in South Africa, we identified Sauvignon Blanc and Shiraz blends as the 2 really good ones that we can do. And then obviously the Millennium is part of the Bordeaux blend stable. If you want to make good Bordeaux, and especially Cabernet Sauvignon, you need it from Stellenbosch. So the Cabernet part is coming from Stellenbosch. We have some Franschhoek wines, and then the Walker Bay is also. Those are the 3 regions that we use. Also cooler climate, and as you can see, the alcohol is not that high. So we make fairly more feminine style of wine. This is still right bank Merlot dominated. And about 52% Merlot, then Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec. So over the years, the percentages change, and it all depends on the vintage. And Edmund, when he put the blend together, separately fermented, and then after maturation in barrel, he will put the blend together. And always, for us, the Millennium is one of those wines, similar to the Sauvignon Blanc. You can take every year a bottle, and it is good quality.
We spoke, again, referencing Yvonne earlier with the Classique. Does she try and create the same wine year in, year out, or does it reflect the conditions of a particular vintage? In the case of the Classique, it's certainly the latter, and looking at each year, what is it giving me in terms of both varietals and the makeup that will be ideal based on the conditions. With the Millennium, is it the same process, or are you trying to pretty much get the same wine to come through year after year?
No, Dan, it's too difficult. You're sitting with the opportunity of creating a special wine, and every year it'll be different percentage of Merlot and Cabernet Franc. And some years you will use more Malbec than other years, or more Petit Verdot. And some years one of the years we only use Merlot and Cabernet Franc. It all depends on the vintage. I think winemaking is one process, but you need to reflect the season and in the wine that you make. And by doing that, you will find the best balance in the wine. And for us, when we taste wine before we bottle wine, we really focus on the balance on flavor that you smell, but also flavor in your mouth. And there must be a balance of the tannin structure and all the different things that make up the wine. So you feel the balance when you swallow the wine. Then you know you have a good wine.
Well, I did 20 odd years ago when I was still at UCT. I do so again, sitting in my cellar here in 2020 in South Africa, drinking wine from an estate that a number of people have been asking a similar question about in terms of being open when they can visit. I see that your La Motte team have responded by saying that we're open on Saturdays and Sundays until we can go back to normal trading, and would love to have you at the estate. So that is an open invitation. Just arrive at La Motte, tell me you're a friend of Hein's, bring your family. You can stay at his house. He'll have you around for dinner. He'll drive you around Franschhoek, play golf. He's very hospitable. Get down to La Motte. Get down to La Motte for the restaurant, for the gallery, for the wine, but also to see broader Franschhoek. And as much as you champion La Motte and by extension Leopard Leap, your other brand, Hein, I know that Franschhoek as a whole is a great, great source of pride and passion. If somebody's coming down to Franschhoek, they've never been down there before, they've got La Motte at the top of the list. Where is somewhere else in Franschhoek, be it an estate, a restaurant, a gallery, an attraction that you should look out for that they might not have heard of, might not have been on the initial list, but is a hidden secret that you'd recommend?
Dan, that's a very difficult one to answer. There's more than 50 wineries in Franschhoek. It's a small region, and before COVID, there was more than 65 restaurants, and obviously the guest houses and the B&Bs and the retail shops that we have. There's some really good places, from big places to smaller places. I think when you come to Franschhoek, don't come for 1 hour or 2 hours or half a day. Come and spend 1 night or 2 nights or 3 nights with us, and then you will feel the beauty. Remember, Franschhoek is one of those towns that is nestled in the mountains. So it's not just running through or you drive through. It used to be called Elephant Corner, and then they changed it to French Corner when the French arrived. So we would like people to come and stay over and experience the mountains and just feel Franschhoek. It's so much different than any other place that you will experience. So yes, La Motte is one of the favorites because I'm part of La Motte, Rupert Rothschild, and the family estates that we have, Lomera, but also the other estates, the Leeuw estates, for instance, where you have the Moulino's making wine. And they are some of the top winemakers in South Africa. You have Boekenhuis, also one of the bigger ones, and then a lot of smaller wineries. So please come and visit the wineries, but not only the wineries. If you think about restaurants in South Africa, always the top restaurants in South Africa, you will find some of them in Franschhoek. And because we play local, we think local, we support local. And we need to grow also our local tourism from Groendal. Last year, I had a meeting. 2 years ago, I asked Jan, our famous chef from Nice, to come and visit us in Franschhoek. And he visited Auntie Susie's restaurant in Groendal. And that's part of our Rond and Bond tourism route. Support the local, because the stronger we are as a group, the better for each of us as individuals.
It's a wonderful philosophy. It's a philosophy that I think has been reflected, Hein, in what Franschhoek as a community has done over the last few months between the food kitchens and the support units and the philanthropy that has shone through richly the people of Franschhoek. And it's just another good reason to go down, sweep up the good karma, and go enjoy great food, great wine, great people, and a wonderful slice of South Africa. Hein, thank you so much. I fervently hope that you are selling wine again soon and selling it in vast volumes. I also hope that I'm drinking wine with you down in Franschhoek, preferably after we've played golf again and for once I've actually beaten you, although I think that's very unlikely because you're almost professional. But thank you so much for the time. Good luck over the next stretch. I know it's not easy for the wine community, but keep strong, and hopefully there are better times not too far away for all of us.
Thank you, Dan. And yes, I'm looking forward to see you at Franschhoek at the winery, but also on the golf course. I'll put a box of wine on for us.
I think you'll be getting it back quite quickly. There we go. Hein Koegelenberg, good friend of mine, good friend of the wine industry, and the man behind La Motte, along with the Leopard's Elite brand, and also one of the owners of Rupert Rothschild, who we saw a little earlier with the guidance of Yvonne Lester, who is the head winemaker at Rupert and Rothschild. Now, at this point, I would normally say to you, right, coming up on Thursday, we have got, except I've got absolutely no idea, because the people we were going to be speaking to were having wine delivered in the next day or two, and that is no longer the case. I'll be spending tomorrow going through the cellar, seeing what stock I've got, and there's a little, and working out who can join us on Thursday as we continue to navigate through the world of mostly, but not entirely, South African wine, and do our best to keep smiling in what are challenging times for all of us, for all of South Africa, but for the wine industry, especially at the moment. Remember that even without wine being able to be sold at the moment, you can still join that Pick and Pay Wine Club. It is absolutely free to join. You just need to send your smart shopper number to that number on screen at the moment. Send a text through, join up. Great benefits. You get 3 times the smart shopper points. You get free delivery over 6 bottles or more, and you get a discount on a select group of wines each and every month. Plus, in store, a really, really good selection of wine. So that does it, unfortunately, for today. We didn't drink the whole Rupert and Rothschild range, but we'll do that once we are able to get hold of that wine, and we'll keep indulging in the La Motte. So a big thank you to both Yvonne and to Hein. To all of our friends in the wine industry, I know it's a tough time. Keep strong. We're thinking of you, sending big virtual hugs and raising larger glasses of wine to better fortunes. And to the rest of South Africa, stay safe, stay home if you can, keep wearing your masks, keep as healthy as possible, and together, let's do our best to navigate through these stormy times here in South Africa. Thanks as always for watching. Thank you for your support. This is Dan Really Likes Wine in the colours of France ahead of Bastille Day tomorrow. If you're French or watching from France or from Franschhoek, then enjoy tomorrow. Beaucoup de vin, j'espère. And I'll see you again on Thursday. Cheers.